Hey everyone, this is James from TDB here, bringing you another Inbetweenisode. Hey everyone, this is James from TDB here, bringing you another Inbetweenisode. Today is going to be a drinking Inbetweenisode, and it's a rare one. It's a drinking Inbetweenisode of some high mountain green oolong. So something that I don't regularly bring on. I wouldn't say it's even like a super regular drink for me, but maybe like once or twice a month sort of thing. But I was recently in Taiwan, so I did pick up some Alishan from a vendor I know in Taipei, Dignity. I want to ask a really interesting question is like, as you get closer to the source, generally, you're going to have better access and things like that. But you'll sometimes hear certain tea places and things like that. If you get too close to the source, it's almost going to become too touristy and the quality isn't quite as good. So, yeah, obviously in Taipei, the access to decent Alishan for a fairly good price is going to be better than it is in Seattle. So I picked up this tea from a vendor called Dignity, which specializes in Alishan tea in Taipei. And so going to be comparing that with a tea that my sister-in-law and her husband generously picked up in Alishan that I have yet to try. So we will be looking at how Alishan compares with tea bought in Alishan versus Taipei. Of course, this isn't a definitive comparison or anything like that. My sister-in-law is not into tea, so I told her just to buy something that looked reasonable and buy it in small quantity if you can. And so, yeah, I ended up with something like this, which is interesting because it's a little bit harder to find stuff in smaller quantity here. But, people that go to Alishan, that's definitely like one of like the things that they have there in order, in addition to being kind of like, I think a national park or something along those lines. And so it brought a lot of different questions to my head. When you're talking about like a city like Taipei or Tokyo is another good example, there are a lot of tourists that come into them. But these are big cities, big functioning cities on their own. So it doesn't get disrupted as much as like a smaller city like Nara or something like that in Japan, which is famous for kind of like its deer or whatever, or potentially Alishan. Again, I didn't go to Alishan here, so I was not the one to buy the tea. But I still thought this would be kind of an interesting comparison. So yeah, let's get into it. Let's compare some Alishan tea bought in Taipei versus some Alishan tea bought in Alishan. All right, let's get into it. So one thing is probably going to be true is that these are going to be similar. But when you do these side-by-sides, the differences are really emphasized. So I think this is going to be a good way to emphasize any distinctions or differences that we have. So here we have the one from Taipei, Dignity here. And so, yeah, let's get going. I believe these are both from spring. Winter harvest had not come in yet. So spring of this year, so 2024. So first steep, usually for rolled oolongs, I like to go a little longer. We're obviously not doing competition style brewing here, but, that's fine. If you want your super scientific, done in a lab sort of experiment, this is probably not the right comparison anyways. So you're welcome to that on your own. And here we have the one from Alishan. I will say, in terms of the leaf, the Dignity one, the one from Taipei, tends to have a little bit more bigger balls and things like that. So that, that's not everything, but I do think that might be a sign of better quality. Okay. In terms of color, probably pretty comparable. So we are using separate cups here. So let's get that as well as that. Okay, and we'll take a smell. Smell is certainly one of the chief appeals of these. Really buttery, creamy, floral smell from the Taipei one. So very classic. Also floral, but a little on the nuttier vein here. Okay. Yeah, this smells a little bit more what I would associate with maybe like almost like Dongding style ones, like a little, it's not roasty so much as it is, but it does have a little bit of a different profile, a little bit less than that kind of heavy, buttery, creamy note here. So anyways, cheers. Nice body, just overall a pretty decent tea. This is the second time having this Dignity Alishan. It's got a nice profile to it. Good sweetness, just overall pretty well-rounded tea. Yeah, so let's see how this one from Alishan compares. Cheers. Potentially a little thinner. The profile is not bad. It does hint at some of those buttery, creamy flavors, but it's not as strong as the Dignity one. The body's a little lighter as well. Okay, it's not bad. In fact, it's more similar than I would have guessed from the nose. So yeah, let's get on to steep number 2. I'd say on the first steep, both not bad. Okay, so steep 2 on these rolled oolongs. I'll usually lean on it a little bit less, so maybe 10 seconds or so. Using 4.5 grams for both of these in approximately 75 milliliter guy ones. So keep it pretty short. And we'll do 3 or 4 steeps here. Obviously, both of these could go a little bit longer, I think, but yeah. Okay. One thing we can potentially do too is give these a little bit more of a stress test, brew them a little bit longer than we would. I don't want to do that quite yet, but maybe on either 3rd or 4th steep. Really floral, some nice big leaves here. Leaf quality here is definitely a little more chopped up as far as this one goes. In terms of fragrance strength, I would say the Taipei one is definitely winning out there. So if that's something you care about, which is something I care about for these Taiwanese oolongs at least, yeah. The color is a little bit darker, a little bit deeper, I'd say, in the Taipei one, but fairly close. Cheers. You know, one thing that's going to be a little hard to discern is kind of the aftertaste and the Huigan of these. So, you know, that's one way that where this sort of going back and forth is a little bit more limiting. Might have a better experience with that if you just brew one tea to completion, wait a bit, and then brew the other one. You know, this profile is not bad at all. This Alishan from Alishan, I kind of thought there was a chance that it would be pretty bad. But I think it's mostly functional. I mean, I certainly could believe this is Alishan tea. Yeah, I would say it's hinting at getting a little bit bitter. So I think I might do the stress test on the next one just to see how they both hold up. Okay, so back to the Taipei one. The fragrance is definitely significantly better on this. I'd say it's a little bit more of a focused profile too, kind of clearer what it's going for. Maybe perhaps even simpler, but simpler not in a bad way, and I would say kind of a good way where it's just using, you know, the right material rather than kind of being blended or something like that. Not that this is blended, but you know, the taste is a little bit more muddled when it comes to this other one. I would say the taste is definitely thicker and less thin than the Alishan bot one. Yeah, and, you know, this one hints at sort of like this grainy, kind of dongding almost profile, and almost a little bitter, like it could be overbrewed. whereas this one doesn't. So I want to extend that brew time just a little bit. Usually in this third brew, I'd probably go similar, maybe slightly longer than the last brew. But I want to see how these teas do up against, 45 seconds or so. So I will do my best to time this in my head. And, in the end, hopefully, the timing of them is just relatively close. Okay, go here. So, yeah, going for a little bit longer, and this will probably be the final steep of this episode, unless I see another reason to do another one. So far, I would definitely say this is the better tea. It's not a bad tea. I'll probably drink this tea up or give it to someone that would enjoy it. It's a nice profile of a high mountain oolong. And this one I would just say is definitely just, decently above average as far as that goes. Alishan, of course, is kind of a range. You can definitely have lower elevation Alishan, so you'll find vendors that will have 2 or 3 different types, and there will be a price range. Some of that could be the varietal. Personally, I don't like the Jinchuan varietal very much at all for any of the teas, so Alishan included. So that's something you can run into that's a little bit cheaper. I don't know what varietal this one is. I know that this one is kind of your standard Chin-Chin varietal. You can also run into winter tea, which can be a little bit different as well. Okay, so let's say that's about good. Yeah, so definitely getting pretty hot too. You'll run into different people that some people like to brew these teas at lower temperatures. And look at that, just filling up the guy. Anyways, I gotta brew this. No time to dilly-dally. Okay, now we do see a little bit of a color difference. Okay, so starting with the Dignity one, both are brewing up a little bit stronger of a yellow here. Okay, and let's take another whiff of these fragrances. Consistent, very consistent, still that same sort of buttery, creamy, floral aroma. This one actually doesn't smell good. Has very little smell left. Okay. Interesting. The fragrance has almost completely died on this, certainly compared to the Dignity one. So I think the difference quality in that is certainly widening. Cheers. Thicker, richer body, more floral, definitely a little overbrewed, hints at some astringency and things like that. It's not too much. One interesting experience I had with High Mountain Tea is when Origin Tea was around, which is kind of my last hurrah with Taiwanese oolongs, where I was drinking it super regularly, and he had a really high quality Dayuling, and he was just like, yeah, load that thing with leaf and just brew it for like a minute. And it did, and it held up so well. Alishan is obviously a lower elevation tea than something like Dayuling, but that gave me it expanded my mind to think of sort of the stress tests that you can give these teas. Yeah, pretty nice. Definitely overbrewed, but pretty nice. It's thicker. It's lost a lot of the sweetness there. Yeah, not very good. I would say the difference is widening. I think this is a tea that you can certainly brew to make reasonably okay. Yeah, so you can just tell the quality of the leaf is much better for this. Even just looking at the leaves too, they just look better when it comes to this. This also has kind of like this darker olive green. It's a little bit more of a pale green here for the Taipei one. So, I'm not... I think you can say that I'm like a Taiwanese oolong expert at this point or anything. I mean, I don't even drink this stuff super regularly, but I think I feel pretty comfortable with this comparison, saying that this tea from Dignity holds up pretty well. So if you are interested, it is possible to order from them. I haven't heard of anyone actually ordering from them online, but you definitely can. So I will include their link and their line where you can message them below. And yeah, this is a nice solid one. Their winter harvest probably coming up soon, which could be pretty tasty as well. So thank you. Okay, yeah, not good. I'm not going to be drinking that. So thank you everyone for tuning in, and thank you also to my sister-in-law and her husband for picking this tea up and making this comparison possible just examining kind of, is tea closer to the source always better? Answer is definitely not always. So thank you everyone, and I'll see you all next time. Cheers.